but it is my absolute pleasure to welcome back to the Krueger Show, Jody Mack. If you're a Bay Area sports fan, you've been listening to Jody Mack for years. CBS Sports Radio, you catch him on the weekends. It's broadcast on KMBR. WIP does nights over there. You've heard him in the past on WFAN. You can also catch him on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, Birds 365 on YouTube. But today he is with us on the Krueger Show. All right, now let's talk about some of the jawing back and forth. Hassan Reddick, said earlier this week, man, it was a lot of boo-hoos last year, a lot of crying, a lot of what-ifs, a lot of this, a lot of that. They get a chance to come back in here, line up that S, and prove it again. And the 49ers, talk some smack after losing last year, which you typically don't do. Deebo Samuel said in May, he basically said, I ain't going to keep going on about what could have happened, what would have happened. But, yeah, it would have definitely been a different outcome. We lost because we played with 10 people. What do you think about the jawing back and forth in this one? I mean, are the Niners have circled this, X'd it, highlighted it. This is a huge game. I don't want to say it's the whole season, but it's a huge deal here. How you guys have is this a huge deal or did the Niners talking after they lost make this a bigger deal? Break this one down because Eagles Chiefs I would think would be a bigger deal there than Eagles Niners.
Funny. I debated that with my partner this week on my show on Birds 365. The added value of the Eagles and Chiefs is Kelsey versus Kelsey and the Eagles versus Andy Reid. The 49ers don't have any players who are brothers with Philadelphia Eagle players, and Kyle Shanahan may be an offensive genius, but he's got no ties to Philadelphia. So different ways to look at it as to which is the bigger rivalry. Eagles play the 49ers more often than they do the Chiefs, but the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, from an Eagle perspective, Chiefs beat them last year. Chiefs won the biggest game of the year. Eagles lost the Super Bowl, so they had to go a little revenge. Coming into this one, the team looking for revenge, of course, is the 49ers. Here was my whole take on the crosstalk after the game, what you can say, can't say, bulletin board material to Deebo Samuel and members of your San Francisco media. Call Vanna White and ask to buy a different consonant. Because if they had said, we could have won the game with Brock Purdy, I don't think anybody can say anything. Yeah, you could have. He was that good. And, yeah, Josh Johnson. Shame on the 49ers for having him as their backup. That's on the organization that they go into a game with a non-NFL quarterback as your backup quarterback. But Purdy was that good. And I said all last year I thought Purdy wasn't going to be given enough credit. I still believe this year Purdy's not getting enough credit. So you can say we could have won the game. But to say we would have won the game, yeah, you don't know that. The Eagles were damn good last year. They earned their way there, and they kind of ran you off the field with your backup quarterback. So the only issue I have is the use of one continent, a W instead of a C. If they had said good, I would have no problems with it. If not, and Deebo and many others did say would have won the game, yeah, the Eagles are using that as bulletin board material. And the A.J. Brown came out today and said, it's Troll Deebo Samuel week. You have my permission. So, yeah, there's some good bad blood between these teams, which should make for a great game on Sunday.
I think more than anything, the most annoying part of this Philly team is Siriani. Mugging for the cameras and talking trash to Chief fans. And I don't think any Niners don't have any problem with any of these Eagle players. But there's something about Siriani that rubs me in particular wrong, but many of the fans. But what do you think? I mean, you've probably had a chance to talk to him or interview him. What do you think of Siriani? How's he viewed there? I know I heard he watches that or listens to that song, No Shortcut Home or whatever from Rocky IV to motivate himself. What do you think of Siriani, Jody?
Number one, he's an outstanding coach. And you come in taking over a team that had been 4-11-1 the year before. Get them to the playoffs. Yeah, 9-8, snuck into the playoffs, got their tails beat badly down in Tampa. But to go from one of the worst records in the league to get in the playoffs next year, pretty damn good. Second year, go to the Super Bowl. That's outstanding. So his track record is his track record. Oh, he's followed it up with 10-1 this year. So if you're just looking at him as a coach, he's been a massive overachiever. as a guy, and the players love him. The players absolutely love him, play hard for him. Couldn't have a better grasp on his locker room than he does. Does he wear his sleeves on his emotions? Yeah, he does. Does he go overboard? Yes. Does he push the boundaries of professionalism, if not trample them? Yeah, he does. That's him. And he doesn't apologize for it. And at some point, it could come back to bite him in the butt. I'll give you a little side story that didn't get near as much possibility as when he does something stupid like go into the stands and go, yeah, we beat you. After the game, he couldn't find Sean McDermott, coach of the Bills, who is a Philly guy, former defense coordinator in Philadelphia, and his parents still live in Philadelphia. It was such a madhouse because it was a walk-off touchdown. He could never find him. Went into the tunnel, waited till after he talked to his team, went down the tunnel to find the Bills locker room and go in and make sure that he shook McDermott's hands. So he understands it. He gets. He's a class guy, but he just loses his mind when the Eagles win, and he does things that, yeah, I could see where it would annoy other teams after the fact. And that's Siriani, and he'll deal with the consequences thereafter, but he's just the kind of guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve.
Some of us older guys, I remember Jimmy Johnson. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jimmy Johnson with the Cowboys in the 90s.
Jimmy did more actual trash talking, though, for the other team. Siriani just kind of, and I don't know what it is about it, but he gets on the fans' case that he'll point up to the fans. We stick it to you like the fans had actually something to do to the game. They didn't, but he more reacts to the fans. Jimmy would take on the other squad. Jimmy would take on other players. He was even more nervy than Siriani back in the day. But what the two teams have in common is they're winners. Yeah, that does crop up from time to time. You got a winner out there in your town with Shanahan. He usually plays his cards closer to the vest. He doesn't coach with and act near with the emotion that Siriani does.
Yeah, no, he keeps it reined in. How about injury-wise? Philly went 92 plays on defense last week. I think they went 72 the week before against Kansas City. How are they rolling into this thing? I know Lane Johnson is a groin and Goddard's hurt, but how about Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter up front, Milton Williams? What's their health situation coming into this one?
Legit question. Milton Williams was concussion protocol. So usually if you're just tracking no two concussions are the same, but usually if you're out for a week that you can pass the protocol. So it would look like Milton Williams is coming back, but he hasn't been cleared yet. So you don't know that. Dallas Goedert, NFL Network reported last night, James Palmer, Goddard is fighting to play this week. He wants to play. Now, he got broken bone in his arm. They said the immediate speculation was IR 4 to 6 weeks. He's only missed 2 weeks, but apparently he's healing up, and they're going to put a big brace on, a cast on it. He wants to play. The Eagles may or may not let him. It's going to come down to the doctor, but he actually wants to be back. You asked me earlier about how big a game is it. Oh, it's huge for the Eagles. I know it's huge for the Niners. It's huge for the Eagles, too. Goddard wants in. Even more so than injuries, they're actually getting better and they're getting healthier, is the fact that they're just playing short at defensive end. They released Derek Barnett last week, which Barnett had done next to nothing other than take up some snaps and give Sweat and Hassan Reddick a couple of plays off during the game. They took Nolan Smith with the 30th pick in the first round this year. He never plays more than 10 snaps a game. They've got him on this major leash. I don't know if they don't like what they see, but they are really pushing the envelope on their defensive end for number of snaps. Overtime this past week against the Bills didn't help, so they're doing even more taking of snaps. That scares me more than the injuries. They're relatively healthy. Their stars are healthy as of right now, specifically if Goddard comes back. They're really putting their defensive end, both of which are very good. As you guys know, Hassan Reddick got the Brock Purdy and tried to separate his elbow early on in the game last year. But at some point, and if these teams match up again in the playoffs, their defensive ends might be a little worse for the wear and tear.
How about the tackles, though? I mean, Carter went out of the game early. It looked like with a back. Jordan Davis either got his air knocked out or he just was tired on the sideline. And then Cox barely could make it to the blue tent. Are all three of those guys going to go?
Carter came back into the game shortly thereafter and blocked the field goal. Great middle of the line, just elevated and got his hands on a field goal attempt. So he was perfectly fine. Yeah, Jordan Davis was trying to chase down Josh Allen. He's not going to win that race. That's never going to happen. But they said he got up to 16.83 miles per hour. You get that heavy weight running and moving in the right direction, I guess you can get it to a good speed. Oh, yeah, he was just wiped. He going all the way to the sidelines to try and run Josh Allen out of bounds. He just ran out of gas. That was the problem. No injury there. Fletcher came back out, didn't play, but he came back out to the sideline, and he wanted to go, but they just wouldn't let him to go. He should be fine. The key guy is Milton Williams, who is part of that defensive tackle rotation. He's a question. If he doesn't pass protocol, if he doesn't pass the concussion, and he's out, you saw that there was a drop-off this past week they had to overtax their guys at both defensive end and defensive tackle. Milt Williams is a guy you got to keep your eye on and see where he is in the concussion protocol, because he's had a very under the radar, very good year for the Eagles.
What is Jalen Hurts' weakness, and would you give him the MVP? I mean, he was second-round pick in 2020. I didn't see him emerging into this kind of player. I mean, I thought his runs were incredibly taxing on Buffalo's defense, including the game winner this weekend. But he also didn't play well in the first half. I think he'd thrown for 30 yards and had two turnovers. He had a bunch of turnovers earlier this year against the Jets. What's the good and the bad of Hurts?
Hurts' quarterback rating, and I don't know how you feel about quarterback rating, Larry. I think it's the worst way to judge a quarterback, except for every other way. It's got its faults, but it's still the best way to judge it. Hurts' quarterback rating at halftime was 7. Wow. 7.0. His quarterback rating in the second half was 138. So I think he kind of picked it up in the second half a little bit. He's the leader in the clubhouse for the MVP. He surpassed and rightfully should have Mahomes the week before, and then added to it with 5 touchdowns, 3 in the air, 2 on the ground the other day. He is the legit leader for MVP, and he absolutely can win MVP. He doesn't care. I care. Philadelphia fans care. Jalen Hurts doesn't care. He is just such a focused individual and locked into what he does and doesn't show his emotion. Unlike his coach, who shows his emotions too often, Jalen Hurts never shows anything. You look at him in the sidelines, you can't tell whether he's just gone 0 for 3 with a pick or 7 for 7 with a 20-yard touchdown pass. He looks the exact same on the sidelines after any drive that the Eagles have. I think the team takes from his strength and his leadership. His stats say he's the MVP of the league. His leadership says he's the MVP of the league. And most importantly, the Eagles' 10-1 record says he's the MVP of the league.
Where do you put Purdy in that mix? He's pretty close to the top in most of these quarterback stats.
I would say the top 5 right now are Hurts, Mahomes, Lamar, Purdy, Dak. Those would be the 5 I would put. If you're not putting if you think that it should be a running back's award, then Christian McCaffrey should be in the mix too, because he's the best running back in the National Football League. It's not close. But I don't put guys like McCaffrey or A.J. Brown or even Tyreek Hill would be a legit guy. I'd have Tua in that group too of the quarterbacks. Maybe I should have gone 6 deep in quarterbacks. I think it's a quarterback award. They use the word valuable. The game is constructed for the quarterback to be more valuable than anyone else. It's kind of a rigged game. So I think it has to be a quarterback, at least wouldn't if I had a vote. And I know Rob Motti, the head of the Associated Press, who runs the MVP voting. And I spoke to him last night and he said, yeah, they don't give them instruction. They've got 50 voters and they trust every single one of them to understand. He's had conversations with all of them, but they don't put anything in writing. They allow you to make your selection as you see fit. And the betting markets, who I think are the best judge because they're unbiased. There's no rooting interest involved. The only thing that matters is making the most money possible. They've elevated Hurts to the number 1 status, and that's where I think he should be.
Why are the 49ers a 3-point favorite in this game?
Is it up to 3? I know it was 2.5.
Well, I saw 3 on ESPN.com this morning. 3? I don't know.
That was so weird, Larry. The games end on Sunday night, and I check it. And the 49ers were a 2.5-point favorite. And I said, Wow, that surprised me. Within hours, the Eagles became a 2.5-point favorite. And I said, okay, that makes more sense. And then last night, it goes back to the 49ers by 2.5 points. I'm going, this never happens. This never moves. Like this, I use VegasInsider.com, and they have like 8 of the top wagering sites that they have, so you can compare one to the other. And the movement on this has been crazy. I can't even begin to figure it out or factor it in. So I'm not touching this game with a 10-foot pole. I'll be staying away from this one with a vengeance on Sunday.
You still betting the horses?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got one coming up from Parks here in about a half an hour, as a matter of fact.
Nice. Who's the most important offensive weapon outside of Hurts? I mean, if you're going to take one guy away and you're playing Philly, you take away Swift, you take away Gainwell, Devontae, Brown, Goddard when he's in there. Who's the go-to weapon?
See, here's the maybe it helps to explain why the Eagles keep finding ways to win. The last 2 weeks, the opposition has taken A.J. Brown out of it. A.J. Brown was there with Tyreek Hill as a legit offensive player of the year contender. He had 8 yards receiving 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, and I think he finished up with 30-something, including a ball. Talk about the luck. Had a ball that it looked to me like he caught and dropped and got stripped on the final drive of the game. And if Buffalo recovers, the game's over. Bills win. They called it an incompletion. He had it. He controlled it. He took a step just before his second foot come down. The ball comes loose. Not a non-reviewable play that very easily could have been judged a fumble. So again, Eagles are getting luck when they need to. So they stopped AJ 2 weeks in a row, and the Eagles still scored enough points to win the game. So I don't know. That's one of the things that make the Eagles good. It could be AJ. It could be Devontae. Swift has been that good. Here's the key on Swift, because Swift had an unbelievable start. Week 1, he gets 1 touch, 1 against the Patriots. Gainwell turns up hurt. Week 2 against Minnesota, he goes for 170. Week 3, he goes for 130. He went for 300 yards over 2 weeks. And then he dipped back down again. And what the hell happened? Jalen Hurts isn't running with the same effectiveness. When Hurts is a +1, and you have to defend the Eagles that way, that you have to show respect to him on the RPO, and you can't just narrow focus in on the back, it makes it tougher for the back. The last couple of weeks, including that game-winning touchdown the other day, Hurts looked very much like the guy who was one of the better running backs in the National Football League last year. So if the Eagles can bank on Hurts, if Hurts can make a couple of plays with his legs in the first half, 49ers are going to have to play honest defense, which could make Swift the key guy on the Eagles offense.
Let's talk about the major factor from the last game, which was that the Eagles offensive line really pushed and bullied the 49er defensive line. And yet, the Niners have been much better on that defensive line in the last month. Since Chase Young came aboard from the Commanders, they've got 15 sacks in 3 games. Now, the Eagles, I think, have maybe the best offensive line in the game when everybody's healthy. They rank second in Pro Football Focus, their cumulative pass blocking grade. But Hurts has taken 29 sacks this season. That's the 12th most in the league, largely due to the fact that he holds the ball for 3.15 seconds. That's the slowest snap to release in the league. What do you think? I mean, the Niners they know they've got to be much, much better in this particular battle. And this might be the biggest challenge, really, because they got to have a powerful rush, but they got to have a disciplined rush against a guy like Hurts, who will take any avenue you give him. Why has Hurts been sacked as much? And how is this offensive line now with a little bit more age? I mean, Lane Johnson's got the groin. He's going to go, right? Kelsey, ran back to the locker room before the overtime, but he came back out after 2 very uncharacteristic false starts. How good is this line? Is it better or worse than it was a year ago?
I wouldn't say better, but and if I said worse, I would say not appreciably. Very close. It's Cam Jurgens fills in their second-year backup center to Jason Kelsey. He's going to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelsey at some point, but that could be 2032 because we keep saying Jason's going to retire this year, and all he does is continue to play. But but Jurgens plugged in for Sayamalu has not been any issue whatsoever. He's been just as good. And I should have mentioned that earlier. You asked me about the injuries, but maybe it's because I'm speculating here. Lane Johnson tore some scar tissue with a previous injury he had on his groin, and that's why they ruled him out against Buffalo last week. The speculation is that he'll be good to go by Sunday against the 49ers. So I didn't mention that. I probably should have. Thank you for reminding me. That's Eagle offense. They're going to take some chances. They're going to take some sacks. They want Jalen to have the chance to make a big play downfield to either Smith or Brown. So every once in a while, the 49er defense, and they got some good guys on the cover corner there. If they can stay with their guys, Jalen's going to hold it. He's going to give you a chance. He'll give you a chance to get a sack, but he's also very good at dodging them and then creating on the fly. The big touchdown pass he threw to Zacchaeus last week that gave the Eagles the lead in the fourth quarter was a complete schoolyard play. That wasn't anywhere near where it's supposed to be, but he extended the play, and Jalen can go either left or right. Some quarterbacks, right-handed quarterbacks, are only good when they're rolling out to their right. Jalen Hurts can do the left behind his back and throw the ball downfield. I think that's on the Eagles just because of their aggressive nature, that they want to give Jalen a chance to make a big play, and if they got to pay a price for it, they will, which means your two very good defensive ends will have shots at Hurts again this week.
What's the weather report for this thing? Do we have any idea what it's going to be on Sunday?
Oh, that's so funny. I'm being honest with you, Larry, I haven't even checked. When they were in Kansas City, I went to 10-day forecast before they didn't even play the week before, and I was already checking the Kansas City one. And we're down to 5 days, and I don't know what it's going to be like here in Philadelphia. Shame on me.
We know it'll be cold compared to here. We know it will probably be sloppy conditions, or it's not going to be a slow track, but it's going to be a slower track than they just were up in Seattle on that fast carpet for sure. The one thing, Jody, about the Niners is they love to attack the middle of the field because it generates a lot of yards after the catch. Now, the Eagles are a great tackling team. They eliminate a lot of those yards after the catch. But second year in a row now, Purdy's leading the NFL in efficiency on intermediate passes, averaging about 13 yards per attempt on those intermediate passes. The Eagles, if you look at the numbers, biggest defensive struggles have come on such passes between the hashes where they're allowing a 95.6 QBR. It's a lot of statistical mumbo jumbo. What really, ultimately the Niners are going to attack the middle of the field. What do you view as the weakness of the Eagles defense? Because, I looked at the box score and I watched the game. Cunningham, double-digit tackles. Morrow, Byard had 13. A lot of it was because it was overtime, but Blankenship, they had 4 different guys who had double-digit tackles this week. What's the weakness of the Eagle D outside of the front? The front is obviously real strong.
You made a good point about the 49ers using the middle of the field. Those guys get a lot of tackles. And when you're registering tackles, where are you making the tackles? If you're a linebacker, you want to be making it within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. If you're pulling a guy down 9 yards past the line of scrimmage on first down, you get a tackle. Not a good tackle. If you're getting them into a 2nd and 1 situation, their coverage on the second level is not what it needs to be. Their linebackers aren't great in coverage. Greg Kittle could be looking at a big game. Tight ends who aren't as good as Kittle are having big game against the Eagles this year. And their safeties, they went out and got Byard, which was an upgrade from what they had. He is a very good tackler, and there were a couple plays against Buffalo this past week. He doesn't make the tackle on the back end. The guy's going to the house. So he's a short tackler too, but he's not great in coverage either. So between their safeties and their linebackers, they're fine with their 2 corners outside with Bradbury and Slay. But their safety coverage and their linebacker coverage, there are plays to be made there, and the 49ers have the type of players who can make those kind of plays.
Well, it's going to be a really interesting game. I'll get your prediction on this one, but let me ask you this, because one of the things that really stands out is that the Niners have the better point differential by a lot, but 7 of the Eagles' 10 wins have come by 1 score. They've played and won the grimy games, where 7 of the Niners' 8 wins have come by multiple scores. Would you rather be the team with the fat, point differential that's maybe an example of your power, I guess, on both sides of the ball, or would you rather be the team that keeps finding ways to win the close ones and are a little bit more battle tested? Which team is the better team if you're looking at the point differential coming in?
The world of sports, just in general, for me, has become too analytically driven. I get it. And I'm not an old school, screw the numbers. No, I understand that a lot can be learned, a lot can be derived. You can take from it and coach better because of it. But some people are so over the top and they think that numbers can solve absolutely everything. You still got to go out and block and tackle and win games. The number that means the most is 10-1. There's no getting around it. That's the most. I don't care about yards per game or margin of victory or plus minus. What's the record? 10-1. And the Eagles have the best record in the National Football League. So I give them an advantage there. I think there's one argument to be made for the Eagles and one argument to be made for the 49ers. The Eagles' argument is if it's a one-score game, and that basically is all that they play, they got Jake Elliott, and the guy nailed a 59-yarder on a bad turf with no time. He just is a phenomenal clutch kicker to have. I was on the air. I was on CBS while the game was ending, and my buddy was hosting, Ryan Hickey, asked me, what do you think? I said, Jake's clutch. He's money. He's got ice in his veins. He's going to make this field goal. And sure enough, he did from 59. If it comes down to that, Jake will make the kick, and the Eagles will want to win a one-possession game. If the 49ers win, they might win by more than one possession because they are more driven. They have revenge on their mind. They are, I wouldn't, my partner on Sunday on WIP said he picked Buffalo because they were the more desperate team. Yeah. I had not even thought along those lines and said, Al might be onto something there. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. I stuck with my Eagles pick and I ended up being right, but maybe I didn't put enough to that. I would not use the word desperate because surely the 49ers are not, but they're the more driven team, and that could play to their advantage. They are more motivated coming into this game. Eagles have a little wiggle room. We keep saying it here in Philly. There's no team with 2 losses. 49ers tied for the second best record with 3 losses. Eagles have a game that they can afford to lose. I don't know if they will or won't lose it this week, but if they do, it might be because they realize they've got their wiggle room. And after the fact, they'll tell you that that's the case. During the game's actual play, will you see that? Will you acknowledge that? I don't know. That's up to whoever is winning the game. And I give the 49ers a shot because of that. They're more in, not desperation, but they're more motivated to win this game than the Eagles.